Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Q. In this video I'm looking at the Tier 10 American multi-role fighter, the Chance-Vought F7U Cutlass. Hello there. Here we have the F7U on the tarmac outside my hangar. This aircraft saw operational service with the US Navy from 1954 to 1957, but was underpowered and had a poor safety record with many accidents, many of them more than usually severe. It was abruptly removed from service as a result. Those of you familiar with my Twitch streams will know I often describe this plane as the worst tier 10 in the game, which is saying something considering there is the ME262 HG3 as well. That's because I have significant difficulty with most of the planes using American 20mm cannons. This one, the F6U Pirate, the XF90. Whereby I feel the sparkles as you hit your target are not in synchronization with the sounds of the shells hitting it, leading me, as somebody more visually orientated than guided by sound, to give insufficient lead. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with that. In the case of this plane, probably it's not helped by the position of the guns on top of the air intakes at either side of the fuselage. That said, this plane features good ordnance, and I'm adapting my play to get more out of the plane than I did in the past. Let's go and look at the numbers. Here's a spreadsheet showing all of the tier 10 multi-roles. There are 6 of them. They're quite a varied bunch. If you don't know what's going on here, then below in the description there is a link to a video that will explain what's happening here. I will say now that in these comparisons, the configuration of the aircraft was stock in every case. Ordnance where available was mounted, the equipment was removed, the pilot sent back to the barracks, and the modules are all top. I'll start by looking at the guns, and initially the news is not good. The rating is only 41, which is second best in class. The cumulative DPS is 720, which is third best in class. Thereafter, there are pieces of good news to come. We have 4 20mm Mark 12 cannons mounted on the plane. It's said to be on the cowling, but in fact, as we've seen, they're on top of the air intakes on either side of the fuselage. The rate of fire is an excellent 600. And the range is 2,690 feet, which is the best of any plane gun in this comparison, with the exception of the I-215 sniper cannon. The auto-aim angle, the amount you can be off target by and the game corrects your aim for you, is a little bit tight at 2.5 degrees, but it's no worse than most of the guns here, and it is certainly serviceable. You'll need to aim, however. And then we get to our first piece of excellent news. The base characteristic for the dispersion angle, which is the way that the shells spread out as they leave the muzzle of the cannon, is an excellent 0.45 degrees. This is a really superb dispersion angle, and it means that the guns are very accurate. The overheat time is only 4 seconds. That's a little bit tight. You will need to manage these quite carefully. But then the next piece of great news is that the shell velocity is fantastic at 1,897 feet, best in class. And that means you will have to lead less than you would with the other planes here. Overall, these are destructive weapons when you're firing something dead ahead of you. And if you don't have my problems with lead, then they will be destructive weapons, full stop. Turning to the ordnance, we can see that the rating is 19, which is considerably less than the Hunter, the Thunderstreak, and indeed the BVP-215, although that latter aircraft is an outlier because most of its rockets are used for air-to-air engagements and not for attacking ground targets. Even so, you may be wondering why I described the ordnance as good, and it's for this reason. It consists of 4 500-pound bombs, and they're really easy to deploy, and they don't reload too slowly either, 120 seconds, although note you cannot improve that because there's no equipment slot for the ordnance. The Hunter has a couple of bombs that are easy to use, and then lots of rockets. The Thunderstreak has 2 easy to use Tiny Tims and then lots of rockets. And personally, I find maneuvering the aircraft, which is a fast one, of course, being a tier 10 multi-role, makes it quite hard to get the rockets off as quickly as I can get the bombs off. And for that reason, I like this ordnance and I describe it as good. Survivability of the S7U is pretty good, second best in class with a rating of 18, 700 hit points, which is the same as the ME262 and XF90 heavies, damage resistance of 48, it's okay, slightly low fire resistance figure, you need to watch that. The F7U is a winner on airspeed, rating of 77, equal best in class with the Hunter. The cruise speed is a little bit ordinary at 299 miles an hour, but it has an excellent maximum boost speed of 658 miles an hour and a nice long boost of 20 seconds. Maneuverability, however, is not a strength of the F7U. The rating here is 47, which is second worst in class, and only the BVP 215 manoeuvres less well, and that plays more like a heavy anyway. And you can see the turn time is 13.1 seconds, roll rate of 110. This controllability figure of 79.2 is worst in class, and that means the aircraft will tend to slide through the air rather than respond to an instruction to change direction. The range in which your characteristics don't degrade is quite good at 249 miles an hour. That's between 217 and 466. The stall speed is relatively high at 124. The altitude performance, however, is pretty good news. It's reasonably good for a multi-role, although not stellar. The BVP, as I've already mentioned, plays a bit like a heavy and therefore has a better altitude performance. What's really interesting here is this really good climb rate of 523 feet per second, and that is a potential escape route from pursuing aircraft, so bear that in mind. If we look at the worst in class figures, we can see that there's a lot of red here, but we've already discussed the issues arising from these warning markers. So where do I think the profile of this aircraft leaves it? Well, I like the airspeed, it's good, and I think the ordnance, even if it's not the most powerful, is easy to use. The manoeuvrability, on the other hand, is indifferent, and therefore I like to set this aircraft up for speed and seek to use that ordnance as often as possible. Let's go and look at how I've set the aircraft up. Here we are with the F7U again. When you first get this aircraft, you will see that you have 5 equipment slots, 1 on the cockpit, 1 on the airframe, 2 on the engine, but 1 is locked, and 1 on the forward firing weapons, which is also locked. Note that there is no equipment slot for the ordnance. Consumables, there are also 5 slots. We have 1 on the cockpit, 1 on the airframe, 1 on the engine, 1 on the forward firing weapons, and also 1 on the ordnance, but that is locked. I've popped the aircraft into specialist configuration. Let's look at what I've done with it. And in the first slot, there may be a bit of a surprise. I have opted for the navigational radio equipment. Your other choices are cockpit armor. My experience of the plane is such that I don't think that's necessary to mount. The pilot isn't injured or frequently enough. Whilst it's true I'm building the aircraft for speed, I don't intend to make it manoeuvrable, therefore the need for a G-suit is much lessened. The other choice that will attract people, I think, is the gun sight, and why not? It's an excellent choice to improve the accuracy of these guns. But I went for the navigational radio equipment because of stealth purposes. I have an increased view range, which means I can see more quickly the threats that are around me and perhaps take action to avoid them. The enemy can't see me as quickly, which means that I may go undetected at a critical part of the battle. And you can also use bonus characteristics to work on the accuracy. So as you can see here, I have as a bonus characteristic 10% accuracy at forward firing offensive armament. That goes some way to making up for not using a gun sight. You can see I've also opted for concealment and an extra 10%, which I can detect enemies for even more ability to detect threats and perhaps avoid them. The main characteristics of this piece of equipment have given me 14.6% concealment, and it is ultimate level equipment, fully calibrated, and 14.6 enemy detection range. The drawback here is that the pilot's resistance to injuries, rather like the gun sight, is decreased. Other bonus characteristics, there's a 5% concealment, but I've opted for the 10. You could take 5% accuracy when firing at moving targets, a bit like a gun sight. That's going to widen your auto-aim angle a little bit. Or you could take 10% tolerance to damage from AA guns. But I've set this up the way that I want it. The pieces of equipment for the airframe and the engine affect the way that the aircraft flies, and you can see here that I've opted for 2 pieces of speed equipment but 1 piece of manoeuvrability equipment, the lightweight power unit, and I'll explain why as I go along. Turning to the airframe, my choice is an ultimate polished skin, and that's because I am not using the uprated engine, but I still want to have a positive effect on the cruise speed. We can see that this is ultimate level equipment, but it is not calibrated at all. There's more to come. Currently I have 6.5% extra cruise speed and 6.5% acceleration whilst diving. The downsides of using this equipment are 2.8 2.8% loss of yaw maneuverability and 2.8% loss of maneuverability in turns. I've compensated for that, as you can see, with these bonus characteristics. I have picked off a 1% maneuverability in turns improvement and a 1% improvement in the yaw maneuverability, and a little bit more cruise speed coming here with the 1% characteristic. Your other choices here: another 2% acceleration whilst diving, a 3% acceleration whilst diving, and then 1% maximum speed with boost activated. You might choose the bottom one of those. I probably don't recommend using the other two, since you're not going to be doing an awful lot of diving in what is a relatively low altitude aircraft. If you fully calibrate the piece of equipment, you will be able to get your cruise speed improvement up by 10%, your acceleration whilst diving up by 10%, and then your maneuverability and maneuverability in turns will be degraded by 3.8%. Coming to the high-speed gas turbine, we can see that this piece of equipment is ultimate level and fully calibrated. Other choices: engine armour protection. I've already rejected the idea of building this aircraft like a tank, so that's a no for me. I will discuss the uprated engine when I talk about the lightweight power unit in a moment. With the combined injection boost system, we get 10% acceleration with boost activated improvement and a 5.8 maximum speed improvement under boost. Against that, we lose 20% of boost availability. Now, I can see here that I haven't worked on the bonus characteristics sufficiently. If we bring them all up, you can see I have a 5% engine cooldown rate, but I dropped the next two: the acceleration with boost activated and the maximum speed with boost activated, and I would go for the 10% engine cooldown rate and 5% boost availability instead. In the other equipment slot for the engine, I have a lightweight power unit, and that's ultimate level equipment and it's fully calibrated. There's a twofold reason for using this, in my opinion. The positive reason is that more maneuverability gives you more time on target when something is actively maneuvering to try and get away from your guns. The negative reason is that the use of an upright engine adversely affects the fire resistance of this aircraft, and it's not that high. If we look over here, we can see that the figure is 50. If you mount, for instance, an ultimate level, fully calibrated, uprated engine, that is going to go down to something around 34, 35, and at that point I feel you have to start taking countermeasures against the risk of fire, which could mean mounting a fire extinguisher, it could mean mounting an exhaust bleed inerting system, or it could be using skill points for fire resistance and firefighting on your pilot. None of these are things that I enjoy doing, and therefore I prefer to avoid the risk by not mounting the uprated engine. However, if you are interested in pure speed on this, and I will show you a build in the post-build effects with the uprated engine, then do that, but remember to take countermeasures. What we have coming from the lightweight power unit is an extra 10% of yaw maneuverability and an extra 4.2% maneuverability in turns. On the bonus characteristics, if we bring them all up, I've opted to increase the cruise speed by 1.5%. Why not? You're not getting an effect from an uprated engine, so working on cruise speed is a good idea, and an extra 2% maneuverability. None of the other characteristics particularly interest me, but if you don't like the adverse effect of this piece of equipment, which is a 17% reduction in the engine's ability to resist damage, then you can pick that bonus characteristic and reduce that to 12. In the forward-firing weapon slot, I've opted for reinforced bolt carriers. It's an ultimate level piece of equipment, and it's fully calibrated to 478, and it is the experimental version of the equipment, which is a little bit better than the standard piece of equipment, also carries slightly different bonus characteristics. Other choices: I think the range on the guns is plenty for me, so I don't need long gun barrels. It will attract some to be able to shoot at 2,900 feet instead of 2,700 feet. Gas-operated action would be a good idea. The DPS on the guns is a little low, some may consider, and if that is the case, mount the gas-operated action to improve the DPS. I mentioned that the overheat cycle on this is 4 seconds, and I find that a little bit short, and that's why I've opted for these bolt carriers to increase the burst length, as you can see, by 32.8%. The adverse effect of that is that I've lost 10.6% of my accuracy. I also haven't fully worked on these bonus characteristics. If I bring them all up, I do like the 5% rate of fire, which increases the damage of the guns characteristic that I've selected. That's third. But I've then selected the one above it, which is 2%, and there's one at the bottom for 3%, so that would be swapped immediately, assuming I was going to keep the other characteristic, which is a 5% cooldown rate of forward-firing offensive armament. But even there, if I was going to keep that cooldown, I'd swap it to the 10% cooldown rate, which is just above it. Turning to the consumables, I haven't used an uprated engine, so I'm comfortable with the first aid dressing package. I don't like my pilot being injured and not being able to shoot at aircraft accurately. Your other choices, not the sparklers, smoke flares or fireworks. Sell those, get extra credits. Fire extinguisher, which if you are using an uprated engine, this may be your choice. I've gone for more manoeuvrability, just in case perhaps I'm fighting another F7U or a similar aircraft, a Hunter particularly. You'll see plenty of those. And that gives you an extra manoeuvrability in all axes for 10 seconds. The emergency control system isn't that useful in my opinion. If they get damaged, you're probably going to get shot down anyway. If you're using an uprated engine, again, you might opt for the exhaust bleed inerting system instead. Only got one consumable slot for the engine, which is unfortunate. I've opted for the engine cooling to give me 10 seconds of extra boost if I have any boost at all. If you lose the engine too often, you might choose the manual engine restart bottle. I don't find that that's necessary. If you're interested in pure speed, go for the improved mixture control. I have mounted universal ammunition over and above the standard ammunition. If you're going to use the gold, you probably already know what all of these do. And finally, the one thing that you can do about the ordnance, you haven't got an equipment slot, but you do have this consumable slot. I've mounted improved fragmentation, which improves the damage output of the bombs. Again, there are gold alternatives which you will know about if you're going to use those. Now, let's talk about pilot skills, and this is a tech tree aircraft, therefore not a crew trainer. I have a dedicated pilot for the plane, although there are other choices which I will discuss in a moment. I haven't flown this aircraft a lot, it's not a favourite of mine, and I believe that if I were to be presented with 10 skill points, as have been distributed here on various skills, I wouldn't build it this way. So I'm going to reset them, and you may not have seen this before. Reset, and I have two options. I'm going to spend 400,000 credits to get 10 skill points or 500 gold, both of which may be in short supply for you, but at least you're getting to see how this is done. So reset, not for gold, so we'll cancel, choose the credits, reset, and here we have 10 skill points waiting to be distributed. My emphasis on this aircraft is on speed, not manoeuvrability, and thus I would do this. First choice would be Aerodynamics Expert, second choice Engine Guru 1, then Marksman 1, and then I'm going to go Engine Guru 2. That leaves me one skill point at the moment, so going back to the theme of being able to detect threats more quickly, I'm going to place that so it's doing something useful on Eagle-Eyed. Otherwise, when I have another skill point, I might release that skill point and pick off Cruise Flight. Those of you who want to try and damage bigger targets than the gun emplacements that I regularly go for might instead consider Demolition Expert, and then we're up to a highly skilled pilot, and further skills are a long way in the future. For what it's worth, I would use the last skill points on Resilience. Incidentally, if you're using an uprated engine and you're in a similar situation to me where you have a skill point that needs to be used usefully prior to reallocation later, then instead of choosing Eagle-Eyed, you might choose Fire Resistance or Firefighter. You do, of course, have two American special pilots that you might consider using. I wouldn't use Elise Clark in this plane, although some of you might like the extra manoeuvrability and the ability to resist damage. I would opt for Mary Loveheart, and if we look at her skill set, we can see that one of them in particular appeals to me. Eagle's Wings, which increases the engine thrust by 2% and boost duration by 10%. And if you're looking carefully, you'll see that in fact I have trained Mary Loveheart on this plane for the period. She does have another skill, which if you're going to get into dives and you're looking to damage larger targets than gun emplacements with the bombs, Valkyrie's Wrath is for you. Rockets and bombs released in a dive cause double damage to ground targets, but be warned this has to be a steep dive and a fast one. Let's go and see what effects on the plane my choices have made. Here is a spreadsheet summarising the effects of my choices on the base figures of the aircraft. The base figures of the aircraft are in columns C and D. You've seen these before in the aircraft statistics section. The effects of my choices are in columns E and F. The difference between the two is in column G in absolute terms and in column H in percentage terms. Now I have changed things slightly. I've fully calibrated the polished skin, and I've also put my desired bonus characteristics on the reinforced bolt carriers. And as a reminder, what we have is a navigational radio equipment, polished skin, high-speed gas turbine, lightweight power unit, and those reinforced bolt carriers that I've just mentioned. The effect on the gun armament is positive. The rating has gone up to 45. The DPS has gone up to 778, which is an 8% improvement. We have a very, very slight decrease in accuracy, so slight that you won't notice it, but we have got the overheat time up to 5.3 seconds, which I think is really useful on this plane. So far as the ordnance is concerned, the rating has gone up to 21, and we've been able to put a couple of thousand extra damage onto those bombs. That's a 10% improvement. No effect on the survivability, critically no effect on fire resistance. The airspeed, and this is where we've seen a big improvement. The rating has gone up to 88. That's a very nearly a 15% improvement. We have the cruise speed up to 354, which is a 55 mile an hour improvement. The boost maximum speed up to 712, a 54 mile an improvement. We have, however, lost a second's worth of boost. That takes it down to 19. You probably won't notice that either. There is a slight effect on the manoeuvrability. This is not the intention of the build, but the rating has gone up to 52. We've got the turn time down by 2/3 of a second, 5% improvement or thereabouts. The roll rate is marginally improved, and the yaw manoeuvrability has gone up by 16%. We just look at the altitude performance quickly, we can see that the change here, which gives us an extra rating point, bringing it to 55 from 54, is a 53 foot per second improvement in the climb rate, and that was already a good climb rate, so that's very useful to have. Other effects on the guns, we have a 10% cooldown rate improvement, nothing on the ordnance. Survivability, notice that concealment figure, that's the combination of the navigational radio equipment plus the seasonal camouflage I'm using, so a 44.6% improvement in concealment. And two effects coming from the camouflage. Unfortunately, we've lost just over 11% of the pilot's ability to resist injury. On airspeed, we have some acceleration improvements, 16% with boost, 10% in a dive, 2% without boost. We've also got a 15% engine cooldown rate improvement. Now the pilot is Mary Loveheart, who's not ideally configured for this plane. She has Eagle-Eyed, which would be replaced with another skill when more skill points became available. She has got her special skill, Eagle's Wing, which is very useful for this plane. And then we have another skill I would not normally have applied to this plane, that's Aerobatics Expert, so that would have probably gone on to Marksman 1. Aerodynamics Expert, and then Valkyrie's Wrath, so if you're going to dive, you might be able to get more out of those bombs. For those of you wondering what a pure speed build would look like, the effects of that are here. Now, I still have the navigational radio equipment, the polished skin stays in place, high-speed gas turbine. Now we have the uprated engine and the reinforced bolt carriers. The guns will be the same as the previous build, and so will the ordnance, so we can skip over that. However, there are some adverse effects on the survivability. We've lost a rating point down to 17. The damage resistance is now 47. Critically, we've lost 23% of our fire resistance. That's down to around about 38.5. And that is at the point where I would consider taking action with one of those methods that I described in the previous section, such as a fire extinguisher and so on. However, we've got a positive effect on the speed. The rating is now 91, and that's over an 18% improvement. The cruise speed has gone up to 377, very handsome improvement. Now it's 78 miles an hour faster than base. No effect on the maximum boost speed, but it's still a high 712, and we've lost that boost duration of 1 second again. As you might expect, because we've taken off the lightweight power units, the manoeuvrability has come down to 47, which is back to base. There is a marginal improvement on turn time, but nothing that you would notice. The same with the roll rate. If we look at the yaw manoeuvrability, it's very marginally worse. And there is no extra effect on the altitude performance. We've still got the 576 feet per second climb rate. All of the other effects that were listed down here remain the same. Finally, I mentioned a build where you might swap the manoeuvrability and speed components, putting in the uprated engine instead of the lightweight power unit, but adding a lightweight wing frame. And having looked at the figures, this is not something I would do. The gun armament and the ordnance, again, are unchanged, but we've got even worse effects on survivability. We've now lost 2 points. We're down to 16. We've lost 46 hit points, which is a 6.6% decrease. We've still got the adverse effects on both the damage resistance and the fire resistance. The airspeed is nothing to write home about either. It's 85, which is slower even than the first build that I showed you, let alone the second. We have only a 27-mile-an-hour improvement in the cruise speed, which immediately deters me from picking this option, this build in its entirety. The boost maximum speed remains the same, and the boost duration has lost a second as well. We do make some significant gains on maneuverability, but it's still not enough to encourage me to go with this build. The rating is up to 54, the best of the 3 builds. The turn time has been reduced by just over a second to 12.1 seconds. The roll rate is up to 142, which is quite nice. And the maneuverability, your maneuverability has gone up by 3.4%. Again, the altitude performance the same as the previous builds. This is not a build I would choose because of the adverse effects on survivability and the insufficient improvement in maneuverability. Now I want to look at my performance in the F7U across 25 battles, what I call the performance evaluation. And I think the first thing to highlight immediately is that the win rate was only 60%. Now, across all aircraft, I average over 65%. Bearing in mind that I don't fly overpowered aircraft very often and I very rarely fly in fights, both things that will improve the win rate quite considerably. Nevertheless, I think this is probably significant, although we have to bear in mind that at Tier 9 and Tier 10, multi-roles are severely squeezed by overpowered bombers and therefore are often unable to have as influential an impact on a battle as, for instance, those overpowered bombers. The average margin of result was 101, which suggests that most of the games were quite tight. Now, that's not always true. There's a horrible defeat here when my team and I failed to capture a sector, that was a pretty rough battle. You can expect those in the F7U every now and then. Chevrons, the class-specific missions are quite tricky for multi-roles, especially if you don't set them up to be able to dogfight, which I haven't with the F7U. And that means that my maximum chevrons were only 4, and there were no Heroes of the Sky, and I averaged 2.4, which is also fairly low. Personal points. The average was 11,093, which is actually above my average for all aircraft. I average about 10,400. However, these figures down here are saying it's not statistically significant. That could very well be the product of chance. Maximum was 18,445, but the minimum was 5,035. If you cast your eye up and down these figures, you can see that it is very much an up and down aircraft. Sometimes does well, sometimes it doesn't. Rank in the team, well, considering this is a multi-role which isn't that influential, finishing on average second, or just slightly better than that, was good. Did finish 5th once, but as you can see, mostly this is peppered with 1s and 2s. Kills, 9. The aircraft is not set up for killing aircraft particularly. Maximum 16, minimum of 4. Aerial target damage, average of 6,470 with a maximum of 14,104. That was probably defending a mine planting, shooting down ground attackers and bombers. And you can see there's also a horrible minimum here of 2,482. That was a very quick game. It's up there. My team won very fast, quickly indeed. Ground targets. We are trying to get ground targets. I was a little bit disappointed only to average 5, maximum was 8, and there was a game, at least one game, where I didn't actually manage to destroy any ground targets. Ground target damage, average just under 18,000, maximum was just under 36,000, but there was one game where I did no damage to ground targets at all. It looks like a fairly close game. Looks like I was concentrating on shooting things down. More likely I was following a bomber around and not being able to capture sectors as it did all the work. Capture points, and these are both defensive and attacking capture points, average 350 with a maximum of 540, minimum 200, that's fairly good. Now we come to the class-specific missions, and here we have attacking capture points, average of 260, shall we say, maximum of 440, and a minimum of 40. Sector captures, average 3, really ought to be doing a bit better than that if you want to make this aircraft work in the way that I configured it, but I did manage a 7, although there was one game where I think it was one game where I didn't capture any sectors at all. We know which one that is. It's this horrible one here. Defensive kills, And this is why I don't get Heroes of the Sky in this aircraft very often. I do not set up the aircraft to dogfight. I actively avoid dogfighting, and I'm going from sector to sector, trying to do work in capturing sectors. And therefore, I only average 2.2 defensive kills across 25 battles. There was a maximum of 8, and that probably came at a mining plant, shooting down ground attackers and bombers. And as you can see, there were at least one game. I can see 3, in fact, as I just glanced, 4 as I look harder, and probably more, where I didn't actually get any defensive kills at all, and I'm not surprised by that. Deaths, average 1.4, which I was quite pleased with, because I think this aircraft's quite vulnerable, and the way that I fly it does put it in harm's way as it's capturing sectors. That was pretty reasonable. But overall, I think these figures suggest what I've been saying throughout this video. At least for me, this is a tricky and challenging aircraft to fly. The map for the forthcoming battle is Road to Rome. It's the Breakthrough variant, which is a 4-sector map, and it's asymmetric, which most players in the game do not like. The blue spawn point has nearby a command centre, which of course can release bomber flights to flip the garrisons, for instance, or the airbase. In the centre there is a repair airbase, and then the red spawn point has a pair of garrisons near it, and that's a disadvantage. The way to win this battle for the blue team is to try and make sure that you take your command centre quickly, and then also the airbase, and hold it. If you do, you will probably win just by holding those 2 sectors, because eventually the bombers from the command centre will flip one or other of the garrisons. For the red team, it's important to get those garrisons, but also make a dash for the airbase and try and deprive the blue team of possession of it. If we look at the order of battle, we can see that we have an unspecialised EF131 on my team. Here I am in the Cutlass, a very good tier 10 fighter, the MiG-15 BIS, and then we have the IL-40 specialised, but a tier 9, and they're up against a full complement of tier 10 planes. An EF131 specialised, an Su-10 specialised, a Yak-30 also specialised, and which could very well hold down the airfield if the MiG-15 BIS doesn't play well, and then finally to combat our Soul Bomber, an XF90. Now, it's lucky this team is starting on the red side, because plane for plane, they've got a huge advantage. Let's see how this battle panned out. As we head into battle, you won't be surprised to learn that I'm going to go to the command centre first, use a mixture of bombs and shooting down aircraft, whatever it takes to take that sector as quickly as possible. So the air defence aircraft, as is fairly usual, are off to the left. Focus on them first. You can see one that is turning towards me. And with some good aiming, I dispose of it quickly enough. Harass another one. Those fly off behind me, and now I can use a bomb. That should be the first ground target. And it is, and before I can deploy any more ordnance, we've got the sector, so it's now off to the middle to see what we can find. See that the enemy has already got a presence there, as indeed they should. Lining up a target to bomb. And then I see the EF131 coming straight at me. Well, I must take pot shots at that, but I'm not going to turn with it, because that will just invite me getting shot down. And tediously, his rear gunner shoots at my pilot. Half of the course, but I'm now focusing on the bot F7U on the enemy team. So that should be an easy thing to outturn, and it is. Then I see an FJ1 which would threaten me, so I decide to shoot that instead. Destroy that. Now we can come back for the F7U or another target. It's the F7U. These things can be a little bit tricky to hit. Their hitboxes don't seem to be quite where you would expect them. See the Yak, priority threat at the airfield. Don't quite get my shots on him. And now I'm being hammered. You see I'm taking an awful lot of damage, and I'm just trying to flee and escape. You see the EF131 has made it through to the command centre, which we have lost, and already this battle is looking very dicey. I'm still taking flak. Finally the air defence aircraft disengages. Priority targets here, definitely the ground attackers. Both of them, you can see I've just flown past one, now I'm shooting at a second one. Making sure I don't overheat the guns. Finally destroy that one. Go for the second, but now I'm on such low health that the rear gunner finishes me off in a moment. And there I go. Spawn back in, and since we don't have the command center, first priority is to try and retake that as quickly as possible. I do have a couple of bombs. And of course there's the air defense aircraft who are trying to attack the ground attacker. That one flies at me. And there you see me aiming much less effectively than previously. And this is part of the trouble I have with the guns. I never seem to be able to give enough lead immediately. Get down the air defense aircraft. The one saving grace here is we have managed to take one of their garrisons. I used both my remaining bombs to take out this high value target. And now we have the command center. We're a long way behind in this game. FJ1 is meandering in front of me. Help take that out. MiG-15 BIS. Shoots at the Starfire, which I then lock onto and finish off. F7U comes into view again. An easy target for me, but the MiG-15 BIS is there as well. He finishes it off. Spitfire air defense aircraft is rather isolated, so I'm going to go for that. And that goes. Speculative shots at the air defense heavy, they were right at the limit of my range, but now I've got something that I can shoot at. That looks like the FJ1 again. This could be a tricky battle. Slow down, hammerhead turn, trying to get on target. Managed to at least stay with it in terms of a turn, and then I have to break off. Now I'm hoping just to be able to shoot down an air defense aircraft, or indeed this yak that comes straight at me. And that was not a yak, it was an F-86A, I beg your pardon. And that makes me wonder. Looks like we've had the chaps swap whilst they've had possession of the airfield, which we have now taken. We've gone 3 sectors to 1 up. I'm quite surprised that we still have a garrison. We're still a long way behind, but the game is not lost. Priority targets, I saw both ground attackers there. This one's heavily damaged, so I'm going to try and finish this one off. Swing back to base. I'm hoping to get repairs. See a P228 heavy coming in. That's heavily damaged, so I can kill that quite quickly. Swing round slowly. Still trying to get those repairs. Now, here they come. Multirole is getting a little bit close. That's the F7U again. It's also heavily damaged. So I can finish that off too. Bit of a theme there. Over in the distance I can see the Yak 30. That's not really somewhere I want to go. But as I'm about to swing away, I notice that there's an I-211 heading towards me. And of course that can hit me at 3,000 feet or more. So that's a threat, I have to deal with it. Heavily damage it. It gets taken out, and then as I swing down I see an Su-10 bomber below me. Now I'm getting hit, but I want to take as much health off this as possible. But unfortunately I get destroyed. I choose to spawn back at the original spawn point because my assumption is that Su-10 bomber I was shooting at previously is making his way to our command centre, and I don't want to let him. In fact, he appears off to my right, which is a little bit of a surprise, and he's been molested because he's on very low health. I can take him out. Now it turns out that the EF-131 player had also switched into an Su-10, and that's a good kill on that plane. He's not coming back. And that's reduced their ability to flip sectors considerably. And we have managed to hold our 3 sectors that we took some time ago. That rather surprises me, but we're now beginning to claw our way back into the game, and I'm off to see if I can help take this sector, perhaps even get superiority. Shoot at the air defense heavy. Take that down. Now I'm in good position to deploy some bombs. One there. Swing round for this gun emplacement that's coming up in front of me. And then I realise I'm being attacked by a fighter Turns out it's the F-86A. I was thinking about dropping a bomb here, but then I decided I'm going to count the fighter out. Just pull him out of the sector. If I die, I want him to be at least a long way away from the sector and not defending it. And in fact, my speed is enough to make him disengage. He's got nobody else around him, although there is a fighter going behind him now, so that's probably made him disengage as much as well. MiG-15 Bis came and harassed him, so I'm going to help the MiG-15 Bis now. And the F-86A turns just nicely for me. Down he goes, and that's a threat we've removed from the game as well. And we have managed to creep into the lead. It's now 2 sectors all, but the enemy got very few aircraft left. There is one of them, the F7U again. Rapidly becoming my favourite target in this game. And down that goes. Then finally we see the sole remaining Su-10 bomber. He sees me and turns away. Tediously, the pilot is shot out immediately. I heal him, and then we kill the Su-10 bomber to secure a very tight victory. In fact, we hadn't got into the lead, we were still 3 points behind. Without that kill, we would have lost that game. Let's have a look at the outcome of this ferocious battle. We can see from the middle it's a 4 chevron battle, or a grade 2 multi-role fighter, grossing 185,406 credits, or silver if you prefer. Very nearly 62,000 of that came from a premium account bonus. If we look in the message box, we can see there were expenses of 22,800 credits. That was for losing the aircraft. As usual, I was using what I call prepaid consumables, that is consumables I bought in a sale at half price. We have 20,979 aircraft experience. Now, I was running boosters, so this is artificially inflated. The XP without bonuses was 6,879, the premium account bonus 3,439, and then you can see the effect of the boosters there, very nearly 11,000 being added to the XP. And of course, the same is true of the free experience, 4,192 there, but the base is 877, the premium account bonus 171, and then you can see 3,100 and more being added by the boosters. So don't be misled into thinking this is an excellent earning aircraft. I was running boosters. On the personal score tab, we can see that one of the class-specific missions was complete, that for capture points when attacking. 4 sectors captured, 4/5 complete, and then 3/5 complete on destroyed when defending. That's enough for 4 chevrons. Just one more here maybe would have got us the 5 chevrons, but it's quite tough when you build a multi-role for speed and using the ordnance rather than for defending. Personal points of 18,155, 4 sectors captured as mentioned previously, 16 aerial targets destroyed. Damage to aerial targets of 9,954, 21 critical hits coming off the cannons. Lost the aircraft twice, hence those repair costs I mentioned a few moments ago. Capture points in total 540, and then we can see that split for 120 when defending and 420 for attacking. 5 ground targets destroyed and damage to ground targets of 22,324. And we look on the team score tab, all of the players on my team made a significant contribution here, and it had to be that way round because the enemy had the advantage of the extra tier 10 bomber. So as we can see, I'm top on chevrons and personal points on my team. I would have been second by chevrons on the enemy team and second by points as well. The IL-40 Tier 9 slow Russian ground attacker. In this type of battle, that's an excellent score, although it was a fairly small map, of course. EF-131, probably stock, I didn't really notice. Not such a great score for that. MiG-15 Bis put himself about, shot down 2 bombers, as I did as well. I think that was critical. On the enemy team, you won't be surprised to see that one of the Su-10s scored heavily. This chap actually swapped into an EF-131 during the game. Probably took a little bit away from this chap in the Su-10. This guy in the XF-90 tried to defend the airfield by swapping into an F-86A during the game, and then what probably just about tipped the game in our balance was this Yak-30, which could have locked down the airfield, not doing so. That brings me to the end of this review of the Chance-Vought F7U Cutlass, a plane I find challenging because of my difficulties with the placement of the guns to either side of the fuselage, but also because the niche for multi-roles is severely squeezed by fast bombers with huge payloads. However, as I record this, the World of Warplanes team has just announced changes in patch 2.1.26 that promise to decouple ground attackers from bombers in the matchmaking algorithm. It could be that this will act to limit the number of bombers in battles, plus increase the number of attack aircraft, giving multi-roles like the Cutlass an expanded role. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q, signing out.